Welcome back to another webinar that we're offering to you live here from Hackensack. Today we are going to talk about parental alienation, and we have a special treat. We're going to be welcoming Virginia Gilbert, who is a marriage and family therapist and a great friend of Weinberger Law Group. We go to her for all things psychological, especially when it comes to custody and parenting. And today, as you know, we're going to be talking about parental alienation. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can look at the PowerPoint. We're going to start the slideshow. And again, here you see what is parental alienation and how can we overcome it. Of course, our disclaimer first, this presentation contains general information, does not constitute legal advice. Please be sure to direct your specific questions about your own situation to your attorney. And also, please talk to us. Send us a thumbs up when you find this information useful. And as always, you can ask us questions by leaving us a message in the chat box below. I'm actually watching along on Facebook to see if there are any questions that might pop up during our broadcast. Please know and remember, if you don't remember from last time, that we're on about a 20-second delay. So there might be a brief pause between your asking the question and my being able to answer you. But I will be monitoring, I promise. Again, try to be as general as possible. We want to maintain your confidentiality. So if you have a specific question, please direct it to our message. You could direct message us here, or we'll give you contact information later. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to talk about what is parental alienation. Virginia's going to define it for you, tell you how it happens, let you in on some behaviors that alienated children tend to exhibit, what parental alienation means for children. Can targeted parents repair their relationships with their children? And then I'm going to jump back in and talk to you about some legal avenues that you can pursue if this is happening. And hopefully at the end, we'll have time for a couple more questions. And again, we'll offer you our contact information on how to reach us for more help. So I'm going to switch the slide here and I'm going to turn it over to Virginia.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, for your kind words, and I'm very happy to be here today. Parental alienation. So there's a great quote by Margaret Mead that I think sums up kind of the problem with parental alienation, that our job as parents is to teach children how to think, not what to think. And this really gets subverted in situations where parental alienation exists. You know, we're supposed to help children learn to develop critical thinking skills. So, well, why is it you think that way? Or, you know, could there be another way to look at this situation? Or how would you solve that problem? Well, somebody who's an alienating parent who wants to turn their child against another parent doesn't do them. They tell them what to think. It's a little bit like a cult. Children who grow up with an alienating parent it's like they're sort of stuck in a cult and they don't learn to develop their own opinions. So that's kind of the biggest problem with it. But there are ways to overcome that, and we're going to talk about that as this webinar goes on. So parental alienation, how it happens. Parental alienation happens when one parent brainwashes the child into believing the other parent is bad or dangerous. So just like as an example, let's say Mary, the mom, maybe she's a little spacey. Maybe she doesn't have great time management skills. And so sometimes in the morning, she doesn't make sure that the kids have everything they need for school. Maybe a lunchbox gets left behind or a backpack gets left behind. But it's certainly not intentional. And overall, Mary's a really good parent. Well, John, Mary's ex-husband, does not like Mary, does not want his children to have a good relationship with Mary. So he takes these kind of overall benign mistakes, and he blows them up and turns them into, evidence that Mary is unfit, and maybe she's like drinking, and that's why she's sort of out of it in the morning, and she's going to, hurt the kids' chances in school, because when they get to school, they'll be all upset, and the teachers will think they're, behind in their lessons, and this will just, ruin the whole school day. And they communicate this message either directly or indirectly to the child. So the child feels that Mary, instead of being, just having a few things she might need to tweak in her parenting, as we all do, is dangerous, is bad. And so they start either, just not feeling confident that Mary's going to take care of them, or that Mary is really is a bad mom and she's dangerous. So the alienating parent manipulates the truth, so the targeted parent appears to be fit. So it's a little bit like what I talked about. Maybe John knows that Mary has a glass of wine at dinner. Well, suddenly this glass of wine is not just a glass of wine at dinner. It's, Mary's an alcoholic. This is why the kids are not being properly cared for, why they're, occasionally forget things, leave them behind in the house before they go to school, because Mary's, too drunk in the morning to help them get their stuff together. Again, taking little things, taking molehills and turning them into huge mountains. The child then becomes psychologically enmeshed with the alienating parent and rejects the targeted parent. So basically what happens is that the children don't learn to think their own thoughts and feel their own feelings. They feel and think what the alienating parent thinks and feels. And they're very sensitive to the alienating parent. They really lack boundaries. And, very little kids, are all kind of enmeshed with their parents. But if they're developing properly, they should be developing a sense of boundaries, kind of having their own thoughts, having their own feelings. They should feel like safe to, certainly not to disrespect a parent, but to question them, or to say, hey, I feel this, or I think that. Well, a child who's enmeshed with an alienating parent can't do that. And their way of surviving is to agree with the alienating parent. Well, what does the alienating parent want them to do? They want them to reject the targeted parent. Parental alienation, alienators, naive versus deliberate. Naive alienators, so they're kind of like helicopter parents on steroids. They are not bad people. They tend to be just not typically very self-aware. So they do a lot of stuff subconsciously. They are not motivated by hate. They don't hate the other parent, but they really, really believe, wow, John just, he lets the kid, all they do on the weekend is they watch TV, and they're not going to learn to read, and they're just going to be like zombies, and oh my God, they're just not safe with John on the weekend. They're probably not saying that, maybe John lets them watch a little bit too much TV, but John is like funny. John gets them out doing great activities. They don't see that stuff. They just see these things that, are not the way they would do them, and they feel that John is unfit. So they see themselves as their children's savior. Like, I know how to take care of my kids. I have the right way to parent. And John is such a mess. John is a boob, and I've got to save my kids from, John's terrible parenting. So they see themselves as, kind of like riding in on the white horse. They want custody of their children because they depend on their kids for their emotional sustenance. They really can't stand being separated from them. So, a lot of times with parents like this, there's a lot of drama over drop-offs when the kids go to the other parent, and they sort of whip the kids into a frenzy because they're anxious about being separated from the kids. And then the kids, of course, pick that up. And then the alienated or the naive alienator will say, well, of course, Sally doesn't like being with you, John. Well, Sally doesn't like, all the drama, and she's picked up the mom's anxiety.
Virginia, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
So it's the belief that the other parent is unfit. Where does that come from?
Well, it's kind of like a Hatfield and McCoy sensibility. Alienating parents are very, very black and white. So they're the good ones, and anybody who's on their team is good, and anybody who's on their team is bad. So if you have a different point of view, you're bad. And, again, it's a very sort of distorted way of looking at things. Like, mistakes another parent might make aren't just mistakes. They sort of fit into an overall narrative that the alienating parent has of, the other parent's dangerous. And so they look for evidence to support that narrative. But again, they're like picking out little details and blowing them up and not looking at the whole picture.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Deliberate alienators. Oh, yeah. So those people are different. They are motivated by revenge. Now, they don't necessarily have personality disorders, but they often have features of personality disorders, being, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. So there's a lot of entitlement. There's a lot of grandiosity. And there's a lot of exploitation. These are people who treat the kids as pawns, whereas the naive alienator is not treating a child as a pawn. The deliberate alienator is, because the mission is, I'm going to destroy the other parent, and I'm going to destroy my kid's relationship with the other parent, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. They want custody of their children, not necessarily because they don't want to be separated from the children, but they want to hurt the other parent. And this is the ultimate way to hurt the other parent, is to destroy that parent's relationship with the child. Behaviors of alienated children. So it's really helpful to think about a cult. How do people act when they're in a cult? That's a little bit how alienated children, well, it's a lot how they act. The alienating parent has given them propaganda. Mom is bad. That means mom is bad. The grandparents are bad. So the children who grow up in this situation, they're afraid to risk the alienating parents' rejection by questioning them, or even, coming back from a weekend with dad. They had a great time with dad, but they don't want to seem that they had a great time with dad, because mom's going to get upset or mom's going to get mad at them. So they act like they had a really bad time with dad. They've seen what happens when mom gets mad and mom doesn't like somebody, and they don't want that to happen to them. Great. Alienated children. So they tend to parrot back the alienating parents' beliefs and statements about the targeted parent. So they'll say, well, dad is dangerous. Dad doesn't love me. And then if you start to ask them, well, why is it you think that way? They can't really give you evidence. They just are it's like they're sort of reading from a script because they don't have critical thinking skills. If they had critical thinking skills, they would realize, well, dad's not bad. Sometimes dad's a little impatient and he might yell, but, dad is always there when I need him. Dad tells me he loves me. They can't see that. They just repeat what they've been told about the other parent. They resist or they refuse visitation. So sometimes they just refuse to go to the other parent's house. And, when you have a kid who's a teenager, it's very difficult to get teenagers to go somewhere they don't want to go. I mean, you can't take a, 6 foot tall teenager and just like throw them in the car. Sometimes they resist, there's a lot of drama about visitation and drop off. They're bereft when they're away from the alienating parent. So they'll go to visitation at dad's house and they'll be in tears or they'll feel homesick. There have to be, multiple calls to mom and, or maybe they'll go to Disneyland. Well, what kid wouldn't be having a great time at Disneyland, but they can't enjoy Disneyland because they're not with mom. They appear afraid of the targeted parent when there's no legitimate cause. So it's what I've been, what I've mentioned in different scenarios. It's like, maybe dad snaps, when he's impatient. I mean, most parents do at times, or, maybe mom on occasion, she forgets to check that the backpack's in the car. These are not reasons to be afraid of a parent. But again, because the child has grown up in this sort of like cult where they're told that the other parent is bad and scary, they're just afraid for no good reason. They reject anyone associated with a targeted parent. This is something about parental alienation that's really sad. When it gets really bad, it sort of extends beyond the other parent. So suddenly grandparents who were beloved and very active in the child's life are persona non grata. The child hates them. The child hates the friends of the targeted parent. Anybody who's at all associated with the targeted parent is bad. And anybody who's associated with the other parent, the alienating parent, is good. It's very, very black and white. Alienated children can be defiant and sometimes verbally and physically abusive to a targeted parent. So when kids are little, this might look like, the child has broken a rule, and one of the consequences of breaking rules, it's been established, are timeout. Well, the child won't stay in timeout. Dad has instructed the kids to, okay, you're done playing, you got to pick up your toys. Well, they think this is really unfair, and they get on the phone with mom, and dad's being really mean to us, and to try to get mom to, change dad's mind, or just, to sort of create a lot of drama where they don't have to do what dad tells them to do. Basically, they don't see that other parent as an authority figure because their alignment is to the alienating parent. So it becomes very difficult for a targeted parent to enforce reasonable discipline. Reasonable rules and expectations just get overridden. Alienated children can also be very verbally and sometimes physically abusive to a targeted parent. They can curse parents out, because they don't respect them. They can become physically abusive. This is a real problem, if mom is 5'3" and 110 pounds, and Jonah is 6 feet tall and 180 pounds, where mom is actually not the dangerous one. Jonah could be the dangerous one. So these, again, these are really extreme scenarios. I don't want to say that they always happen, but this is kind of the extreme of what can happen in these situations. What parental alienation means for children. So alienated children have trouble forming their own beliefs because they are enmeshed with the alienating parent. They think what that parent wants them to think, and they have not been taught or allowed to develop critical thinking skills. Again, it's like being in a cult, very much like that. They take on the alienating parent's very rigid worldview, us versus them, Hatfield and the McCoys, very black and white. They lack conflict resolution skills. Well, yeah, to resolve conflict effectively, you have to be able to empathize. You have to be able to acknowledge other people's points of view, not just acknowledge them, but believe they're entitled to them, and to not take things so personally. But if you can't do those things, you are going to have a very hard time resolving conflict, and your attempts to resolve conflict are going to be ignore the other person, like annihilate the other person, just not effective ways to solve problems. They often grow up to have chaotic relationships. They, because they have trouble empathizing. They don't have conflict resolution skills. They emulate their parents' relationship, which has been very dysfunctional. So it might be something like, they have a romantic partner and their partner has a different point of view about something. That's healthy. We all have different points of view, but they won't see that as healthy. They'll see that as, sort of a direct threat, or they're being abandoned or they're being attacked. And so there'll be a lot of fighting that happens, a lot of breakups, and then wanting to get back together. Very chaotic relationships. They lack self-esteem. Why do they lack self-esteem? Well, when you have heard repeatedly your whole life that one of your parents, who is essentially part of you, you have that parent's biological and or psychological DNA, if you're adopted, you still have that psychological DNA. When you've been told repeatedly that 50% of you is bad, is crazy, is stupid, you feel that you are somehow inherently defective. So you become very shame-based, and you don't have good self-esteem. Can targeted parents repair their relationship with their children? Yes. There's hope for targeted parents. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think the thing to keep in mind is that what a 5-year-old believes could be very different when that 5-year-old becomes 15 or 20. Some children will see through the alienated parents, that should be alienating parents' manipulations. And actually, I want to point out, some kids don't ever fall for it. And there's different reasons for that. Some kids are just more resilient. Some kids are stronger willed. Some kids just have a way, they're like Switzerland. They're always the diplomat. They're just able to kind of somehow keep allied to both parents. The kids who are typically kind of the prey in these situations are the vulnerable kids. Maybe they have some mental health issues. Maybe they have some special needs. Maybe they're just really super sensitive and they kind of soak up the alienating parents' feelings. Maybe it's the older sibling who's kind of sided with the alienating parent, and the younger one sides more with the other parent. So it's not every kid. And again, as they get older and move out of the home, they will start to see through some of this stuff, where they'll be a teenager and they'll say, well, God, Lily's parents are divorced, but Lily's parents are really nice to each other. How come mom is always bashing dad? They will a lot of the time start to see through it on their own. And, huge blowback for the alienating parent is that often the kids, when they have that aha moment, wait, that wasn't normal. Why was mom, just, not letting me have a relationship with dad? They get angry, hey, why, I should have had a great relationship with dad. Why were you in the way of it? Why did everything have to be on your terms? They get angry, and they can often, sort of turn against the alienating parent at a certain point. So things targeted parents should do, and I'm seeing we're a little short on time, so I'm gonna speed it up here. Tell your kids your side of the story without bad mouthing your ex. Sometimes kids hear things or they see things. A custody battle is going on. You can't not tell them things because it will gaslight them. So tell your side of the story, keeping an emotional charge out of your voice and your body language. Yeah, I did show up for visitation last weekend, and mom wouldn't let me in. She was mad about some stuff. I don't really know why, but I love you, and if something came up and I couldn't come for visitation, I would always let you know. If you have questions about me, please come to me directly and ask me. Present evidence of the good times. So if your kid's saying, I never loved you, I hate grandma, well, take out your phone with pictures. Hopefully you have them. And here's the evidence. Here's us at Disneyland. Here's this great photo of you and grandma. Grandma's reading you a bedtime story. Here are, videos of us together. Show them evidence to support the fact that there actually was a history of a great relationship until the divorce and the alienation set in. Continue to reach out. So this is if visitation has gotten so chaotic that you, the targeted parent, have sort of had to pull back, or maybe you've lost custody. You want to do whatever you can to keep the relationship going. So you text, you send birthday gifts, if, when possible, show up at school, unless there would be just too much of outbursts at school. Because, at a certain point, you want them to have a history and an awareness that you've done everything you could to keep the relationship going. When adult children of parental alienation reconcile with a targeted parent, they usually thank them for keeping the relationship going. And there have been studies shown where this is the case, where these kids grow up and they're adults, and, wow, I'm so glad you kept reaching out. Mom was scary, and I knew what she was doing was wrong, and I didn't know how. I was too scared to disagree with her, and I'm so glad that you rescued me, So it's just, I want to say to any parent who's been a targeted parent, do not ever give up hope. Kids grow into adults, and it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Virginia, thank you so much. So informative. And I'm going to actually jump in here now and talk about parental alienation and what you could do legally from the perspective of the attorney that I am. And I actually want to echo something that Virginia said throughout her presentation that really, really fantastically applies to the legality of this, and that is that it is a marathon, not a sprint. So not only do the effects of parental alienation over time get remediated, but for all of those who know, the court system and justice and the wheels of justice, as they say, move tremendously slowly. So again, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with the process. So parental alienation in the courts today, as we stand today, more and more courts here in New Jersey are recognizing and addressing cases of parental alienation, which is a good thing. What you first and foremost should do, if you don't have a formal custody order in place for parenting time or for custody, and up until now you've simply just been trying to work it out with the alienating parent, you need to get to the courthouse as soon as possible. If you don't have a formal order for your parenting time, then you don't have anything to enforce. And a court is not going to enforce verbal agreements that you have with your ex if there's nothing in writing. So first and foremost, get down there, get an order for parenting time. What parenting time are you going to have? How is it going to play out on holidays? Are you going to have alternate weekends? What about pickup and drop off? And also think about custody. Sharing legal custody, being able to make those decisions, those big decisions in your child's life, is tantamount to remaining involved. As Virginia said earlier, attend school events. If you have joint legal custody, you have the ability to go and look at your child's medical records and report cards, a way to stay involved throughout the alienation. And when you get into court, if you have to go before the judge, and of course it's always the last resort, but if you get before the court and you have the opportunity to tell the judge your side of the story, let them know you believe your child is being manipulated by the other parent, so they're aware of it, so they can put protections into place. Perhaps have your child, you and your ex, evaluated by a marriage and family therapist like Virginia, who's able to understand what's going on and make recommendations to the court. If you already have a court order for parenting time and or custody that your ex is not following, what you want to do at that point is file a motion to enforce that order. This is especially important if your order is for shared physical custody, meaning that your order is to split time with your child 50-50. Some parents do this 4 days on, 3 days off, and they switch it. Some are, do week to week. But if you have an order for custody or parenting time that your ex is just refusing to follow, then you would file a motion to enforce that agreement. The next one is going to sound silly, especially given all that Virginia told us about the behaviors here. But if the judge orders mediation in your case, where you and your ex would sit down with a trained mediator, one that is experienced in dealing with these types of situations, go. You never know. You may be pleasantly surprised and mediation may work. It may just simply take that third person informing your ex about what the law is and what the right thing to do is. Also, if you don't go to mediation and the judge ordered it, then you're not going to be following a court order, and you don't want to open that can of worms. You always need to follow the court orders, even if you don't think that they will help. The judge does think that mediation will help, and the courts really strongly favor parents working things out for themselves. Make sure that you keep a record of everything that's happening. Keep a journal of the times where your child was supposed to be dropped off to you and they never showed up, or times where you've called and your ex refuses to put the child on the telephone, or you've sent a text message and you found out that your ex has taken away your child's phone so they can't communicate with you. Write all of this down. Even if you write it on an actual calendar, make sure you have a record of what's happening, because the more instances that are going to build up, the more you have to present to the court. If you're getting abusive text messages from your ex, or ones that are saying you're never going to see your kid again, or I don't care that you have parenting time, you have to retain these. Again, these are something that you would want to show to the court to prove that parental alienation is going on. Same with abusive emails or voicemails that are, hostile or cursing at you, or are threatening in some way. You want to retain all of this for the court. And above all, do not give up. Regardless of what happens, again, and I'll say it again, it's a marathon and it's not a sprint. And as Virginia said, there's been cases and studies that have shown that the child, as they grow older, appreciate the fact that you went to these lengths, you went to the court, you went and asked for joint custody if that's in your child's best interest, that you fought for your parenting time with them. It'll only benefit you in the end, and it'll benefit your child as well. So that brings us to the end of our presentation. As you see, we have several Facebook events that are coming up, so make sure you subscribe to our Facebook events tab to be notified about next week's live webinar. We're actually going to be coming back to you, Virginia and I, next Friday. We're going to talk about overcoming parental alienation in a little bit more in-depth manner. So we look forward to seeing you for that. There you see our contact information. Our offices are listed there. We have a statewide practice. If you want to come in for a consultation, we'd love to meet you. Give us a call, shoot us an email. You see our toll-free number there. Also, our website is chock full of information, not only about parental alienation, but about custody, child support, how you would go ahead and file your motion. Look there. We have a ton of information for you. I'm going to escape out of here now, and we're going to end today's webinar unless Virginia has anything else.
I don't think so. Just thank you for having me.
Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next week, everyone.